Mario Sergio Lima. He's a senior Brazil analyst, and we're delighted to have him back with us today. Mario Sergio, from what we talked about in the first round, how has this race differed, or are we basically seeing the same kind of gap between the two front-running candidates?
No. First of all, good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here again. Basically, this is Bolsonaro really is making this a very tight race. From what we can pick up now, when we're looking at the Lula has about 1 million votes ahead of Bolsonaro now. I believe the final tally will be something between maybe a little more than 2 million votes in Lula's favor, which is by any way you slice it, is it's the tightest race that Brazil's presidential election has ever had. It's tighter. It's looking like it's going to be tighter than Dilma and Aécio Neves. And I mean, Dilma won the election, but 2 years after, less than 2 years after that, she was impeached. When Aécio never really accepted the defeat. But I mean, at that moment, we had a problem, but at least Aécio wasn't the incumbent, so it's not like Aécio could have a lot to he didn't have a lot to actually create some troubles from the election until the final swearing ceremony. But now Bolsonaro has. Which, yeah. I mean, I really, for me, the best news that we can get today, and unfortunately, I don't believe we will get, would be Bolsonaro saying, okay, I concede, but I will appeal. Because if he just concedes, he's within his right to appeal. I mean, 2 million votes is a very short distance between two candidates.
Yeah, in a country the size of Brazil, yeah, it's a very small margin.
I mean, 2 million voters. It's going to be a little more than 1% of the voters. I mean, it's a very tight race any way you slice it. So, in my view, this will. I am concerned that we will be seeing. We will be entering a moment of some turbulence here in Brazil. I really fail to see how we can have some normal relations from here until the swearing ceremony. And to be honest, Lula will have the work cut out for him. We were discussing this in the first round. Lula will have not only the governors of the biggest states in Brazil are with non-allied governors, but he will also have the most difficult Congress he has ever had to negotiate with. Even though he will probably get a ruling coalition by virtue of a lot of the lawmakers being from what we call the Centrão, which is mostly centrist, non-ideological, but very clientelist types of parties. The truth is, it's still it's going to be very difficult for him to actually have to actually govern, especially in the beginnings. And we have all of what was spent this year to re-elect Bolsonaro will charge we will have to pay this starting next year. So yeah, it's going to be a very
Mario,
difficult...
if I could just jump in here, Datafolha, one of the most reputable polling institutes in Brazil, has just called the election, has projected the election in favor of former President Lula, suggesting that he will win the election. Mm-hmm. do you think that's, is the timing right there? Do you think they're right to project that victory? And, what do you make of that?
I mean, if we go this is a statistical call out and not a mathematical call out, which means I'm neither a statistics major
right.
or a mathematician.
Well, you got the first round right during our live. You got that spot on.
Yeah, but I mean, I will defer from calling it from now. It's very hard for Bolsonaro to overturn this. It's more than 1 million votes, and when you look at where those votes are coming from, it's mostly from places that he doesn't. Most of the votes are not going his way.
Right.
So this is why, of course, you can project. When you make a projection, you can call it. But I mean, we are still a little, if 90%, so we're 15 million votes yet to be counted. I'd rather err on the side of caution. But if you ask me, I do believe that this has come to a place where it's very difficult to see Bolsonaro overcoming the deficit that he has right now. Having said that, I always tend to err on the side of caution. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's a smart move. That's a smart move. You'll make your bets once the election is done. I think that's the best way to do it.
Talking about bets, this is one funny nugget of information that I think maybe we should be looking more on betting markets and less on polling moving forward. Because as soon as the ballot starts getting open and Bolsonaro's advantage was way smaller than he needed to be at that moment. I mean, you could just see, the election betting, there's a site called Election Betting Odds. When you that compiles all of those, because those people are putting their money where their mouth is. So at that moment, like you just saw everybody going to Lula, because even if the odds were terrible, at least you get something when you get it right. So maybe they are better positioned than the polls, which I have to say again, the pollsters are looking like they have failed. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but this is a 50. The Paraná pesquisas, which people really try to put a beating on because they tend to be more aligned with right wing, they are probably heading to get it spot on. So I mean, again, so maybe they at least they can really have a good gauge on the Bolsonaro supporters better than the rest.
And another little nugget of information here as we keep an eye on the results. It seems that former President Lula is about to take the lead in Minas Gerais, where he was behind for quite a while, and which, is obviously the Brazilian election doesn't work in the same way as the United States elections, but if we were to have a kind of bellwether swing state, it's usually Minas Gerais because it always picks the winner, right? And so it seems like Lula is just about to turn there. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed yet, but very close. And
most likely because Minas is a huge state, and it's a funny state in a way that it's a very rich state in some areas, a rich agricultural, rich industrial state, but it's also a state that has areas in Minas Gerais which are as poor as the poorest areas in Northeast.
Of course, yeah.
There is a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference in the state, and this really translates a lot in the voters. I do think that it's looking like Lula is probably gonna overturn Bolsonaro by the slender of the margins there. But it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be like in the first round. It was almost like a perfect example of national voting. Probably now it's going to be tighter than the national vote in Minas Gerais. Lula is winning. Is probably his Ohio.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Winning, but I do think that one thing that is important to highlight is that we will probably have a very difficult transition between two governments. I don't believe that Bolsonaro's team is going to make any life easier. So we're probably going to waste a couple of months in the next year for the new government to actually know what they will face. And I don't believe this is the tragedy is that I don't believe that this kind of tensions will dissipate. I do believe
Right.
that in Brazil we will have at least almost half of the country. I don't believe that from all of the Bolsonaro voters. I do believe that from the first to the second round, he actually gained a lot of votes from people that are actually anti-PT. They remain anti-PT, and those people they do not like PT, but it's not like they will grab arms to try to they will live their lives life as usual. But I do believe that we will have a lot of people actually contesting and not accepting this result, and it will be very difficult to actually overcome. And for that, I think Lula will need to reach out for evangelical churches to actually get those people. I mean, if not on their side, at least trying to accommodate those people into the faithful into let's cool down. It's a new moment. It's a new government. Usually, an evangelical church doesn't like to be on the wrong side of a government because they have interest. They have interest like legitimate and sometimes even vested interest in the government. So they need to be on good terms. So that's I do believe that's the bet that Lula will have to actually get some sort of normal business as usual when he starts his term.
Yeah, and I think it was just going back to something that you mentioned earlier. I mean, in the 2014 election where you had Dilma Rousseff going for her second term against Aécio Neves, Dilma won by a bigger margin than it looks like Lula's going to win by. And I believe it was the very next day, if not the very next day, then a couple of days afterwards, where Aécio Neves and his party, they entered with they were saying that there was electoral shenanigans had gone on and that the electoral result wasn't actually fair. And now, as you said, we're going to have Bolsonaro in government saying these same things and having that kind of power. I mean, you can only imagine how difficult the transition is going to be in terms of, keeping doors locked and hiding keys, all that sort of thing. It's going to be unbelievable.
What our saving grace, when we're looking, the silver lining in all of this is that most of the people that comprise the government, the workers, they are what we call concursados. They are civil servants, whoever is the governor, whoever is the president. So those people can actually make some attempt on a easy transition. But it's a slender margin, like a very, very slender margin. And like you mentioned, the president, the incumbent president, he will have 2 months to appeal as president. So I mean, it's like something that we never saw this. We will probably have. What will happen is that we'll probably have now in a couple of hours when the result seems final. I do believe that the lower house president, which is a close ally to Jair Bolsonaro, he will come and he will congratulate Lula. He will say, "Hey, Lula, you won the election."
Right.
And that's an important part into deflating the type of resistance that Bolsonaro can get. So Bolsonaro will be isolated for a couple of months. I mean, politically isolated. But at the same time, when you look at the relation, Lula is like, I find it very important to say, Arthur Lira will probably drop the wall, but he won't be building bridges as of now. He will wait for Lula to build the bridges, which means he will be stronger than Lula when those discussions come. it's going to be a very difficult couple of months, and beginning the grace period for the next government will be really short, and they will
potentially
need to
non-existent. Really, the honeymoon period might not even happen.
They always have something, you know.
I think you know, if anyone is going to be able to do it, you would say that potentially Lula would be the man to manage a honeymoon period. He's very experienced in that, you know.
He is the best one to do this, but at the same time, he will need to. He will actually need to use all of his political chops. It's not. It's not something that. It's going to be tough. I mean, there's no way to cut it. It's going to be tough. I mean, and you have to understand that if you win an election by less than 2 million votes or a little above 2 million votes, I mean, you give credence to people trying to say that this was a big steal or anything. It would be so much better if Lula got a huge victory, because then he, or at least, you know, like if he won in the national, and for instance Haddad won in São Paulo, so actually we would have a better type of better type of leverage.
Yeah, like a kind of national platform.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see. You know, sometimes as an analyst, you really hope you're wrong. Of course, not every time. But
then you'd be out of a job.
yeah. But I mean, I wrote a note, a report saying that it would be a close call, way closer than what the poll suggested, and Bolsonaro wouldn't accept it. I mean, this part I still haven't got it right yet.
Right.
And it's going to be a very troubling couple of months ahead. I don't see like a nationwide type of a coup d'etat attempt or anything, because I don't think those people are really that organized. But I mean, you will be looking at localized violence. You will be looking at some people, maybe even an attempt of January 6th. Attempt against the Supreme Court or anything like this. You will probably
maybe if we bring into that mix the scenes that we saw today of the alleged voter suppression involving the Federal Highway Police, you know, for a long time people were talking about, oh, you know, the army are going to back Bolsonaro for a potential coup. Then it was the military police, but at the end, the ones who, you know, came through from him on the day, you know, for in his point of view, they weren't, you know, successful enough, I imagine, because it seems like Lula will finish and win this election.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
yeah, they're going to be behind him still.
I do think that by virtue of people actually denouncing it as it was happening, it really helped into not making it a bigger type of problem than it could have. But you know, it was nasty, you know. It has you don't have any other words to describe it. It's not what a republic should be built upon, you know. And when you look, I mean, you look at the elections, you know, Lula is a little above now, 95% of the ballots. Lula is a little above 57.1 million votes. I mean, Lula had this was what Lula had in the first round. I mean, Lula really got very few votes from the first to the second round. While Bolsonaro already got 4 million votes above what he had, he'll probably get even more. So I mean,
just to quickly interrupt you, Mario, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but we have, our supporters have been buying us more and more coffees for our great work during this election. We have Benedict, Soren Storgard Sorensen, Sasha, Olivier Dustali, everyone buying us coffees, supporting our work, and thank you very much for that. And just want to remind everyone that you can also send us questions on Twitter with hashtag Brazilian Report. And, you know, we'll select the best ones and we will be answering them on air. Just to remind you for that. And also thanks again for all the support. It's been absolutely marvelous. Mario, just continuing there then. So we seem to be we've got less than 5% of the votes left to be counted. It seems like you're going to be just about spot on. We're at, that's what, 1.5 million votes at the moment is the gap.
Yes. It's probably going to be a little above. It's probably going to be a little more than 2 million votes, a little, but just by the slightest, because in this 5%, like you have Minas, which is about to turn. You have very few votes from the south, and the center-west is almost done, which are Bolsonaro strangleholds. The north, Bolsonaro actually lost in Amazonas, Pará, which are the most populous states there by far. So Bolsonaro really lost that. It's very difficult to see where Bolsonaro can pick up votes from, like, for instance, Santa Catarina, this is a place where he can get votes, but in Santa Catarina, the number of votes, the percentage of votes that are still up for grabs is the same in Bahia, which is the bigger, 2 times bigger than Santa Catarina. So it's really not, it's only gonna increase the gap. I really fail to see. Bolsonaro actually lost this election. Unless we see like a fantastic type of turnaround, which is not likely. Even in places like, for instance, when you look at São Paulo, you have 5% of the votes here, but it's only shortening the difference. Rio de Janeiro is almost done. Minas Gerais is very, very close to turning, but Minas Gerais is going to be a razor-thin victory for Lula. When I say razor-thin, it's like, definitely. I don't know, maybe 100,000 votes or a little more than that. Yeah. It's like a razor-thin victory. It's difficult. It's difficult when you have that kind of close result to actually say that it's gonna be an easy swift in power.
So I think at this point we're going to be looking at when people are going to start to call the election, potentially foreign governments, because there's been a lot of discussion about that. An effort to make sure that foreign governments do declare the winner in a prompt fashion. And actually, to discuss that, we're going to keep you on the line, Mario Sergio, but to discuss that, we're going to bring in our Latin America editor, Ignacio Portes, who is in Buenos Aires at the moment. We're going to get a little bit of coverage on how this election seems to be going down in Latin America. Ignacio, are you there?
I have no audio.
Hello? Well, Ignacio is arriving. Just bear with us for 1 second. Because, anyway, Mario Sergio, as I was saying, that, a lot of the focus on the day itself was to make sure that the result was going to be recognized by foreign governments. And have we seen anything from that already? Has anyone come out?
I don't think we those guys were really we really wait for the Supreme Court, the electoral court to call it.
We're really going to have to wait until 100% of the ballots are counted.
I don't think they need. I don't think the electoral court need 100%, but they need at least to be in a place where you just don't see a way out. Like I said, mathematical, it's 1.7 million votes ahead. When you have now a little 7.7 million votes to be counted. So, I think at least a couple of percent, 2% at least, we will need to have this so that they can call it. Like I said, it's very hard. It's almost impossible now for Bolsonaro to turn his victory around.
Well, and just quickly jumping in, we've got another 5 coffees bought from McKinley Tabor. Thank you very much again, saying thank you for helping this American understand Brazilian politics. Well, I think that's what we're here for. Thanks very much, McKinley. And as you were saying, it seems to be that, we were talking about before the election that potentially what was going to happen was, if it did follow that trend of Bolsonaro opening this large lead and then that lead slowly being chipped away at by Lula, but it wasn't quite what we expected. The initial lead was really quite small.
Yes.
And Lula managed to turn relatively quickly. We had the fear that what Bolsonaro could do was that if he did start with a high lead, that at some point, maybe about 7 o'clock, if he was still in the lead, he could declare himself the victor. And then,
we had this possibility because we always get Trump and Bolsonaro as one, But the thing is, it's very fast to count votes that are cast in electronic ballots. So until the moment where he would just call it and call people to some sort of go to the Alvorada door and say something. I mean, it's such a he didn't have a lot of time to do this. Apparently, he probably wanted it, but I mean, it's very difficult when the counting is so fast. We have to look at this. Brazil we're heading to almost 100%, and it's like it's 2 hours and a half after the election. It's like it's which country? I mean, I don't think even like country like Andorra can't count votes as fast as Brazil. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah. Right. So, Mario Sergio, thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, that was fantastic. So much information as always, and we'll see if you're gonna get the result right. I think it's pretty easy now to call it correctly. Yeah, thanks for being with us again.
But I said that a little more than 2 million votes. So by now we have a little less than 1.7. So maybe I will get slightly wrong, but
yeah. We're gonna have you back later on in the show. But just to thank you for getting us on at the moment. That was fantastic.